Hello, my name is Rachel, and this is a story of how I got my crush to fall in love with me. I never had a lover before, and the instant I saw him, I knew I would have to find a way to make him love me in any way I could. You see, Theo was a new kid at school. You know how it feels, right? Everyone was interested in learning more about him. Because his father was a famous footballer, all the lads wanted to be his buddies, and all the girls wanted to be his girlfriend because, well, he's cute. Okay, but it's just not that he's unique. There's something else about him as well. He's not as loud and unpleasant as the other boys. He's quiet and enjoys reading, and he just has a mystery air about him. It was the beginning of the school year, and I made a promise to myself that by the end of the year, we would be holding hands and eating lunch together on the playground seat known as the lover's bench. I kept my distance from the other girls who would stroll by him and flick their hair and bat their eyelids at him. I didn't add him as a friend on Instagram or Facebook, but I did stalk him. Every night after my mother said goodnight, I would scroll through his photos and trying to figure out who he was. His family was rich, and his father was the talk of the town, yet he seemed so normal, so down to earth. On weekends, when everyone else was at the mall, where was he? Was he at his father's football games? It didn't appear to be the case. I persuaded my mother to take me to the new modern art museum that had just opened after he posted a video from there. I knew my friends wouldn't be interested, so I urged my mother to take me. I told her it was for the research for a project, which isn't technically a lie, but I couldn't tell her it was just so I could seduce Theo. I took a number of photos of the displays and even a selfie at the museum's entrance. I published them online with the same hashtag he used in the hopes that he would see them. Okay, so he was a fan of the arts. What else was he fond of? I could never get close enough to see what he was reading because he constantly had his nose in the book. I went to the school library after school one day and asked for the librarian if she could tell me what he liked to read. She directed me to the classics. He was just making his way through Shakespeare's works, she claimed, and had recently finished Romeo and Juliet. I borrowed a copy and carried it around with me the next day at school in our literature lesson, where I had always been quite quiet. I began to raise my hand more frequently. I swear he smiled at me after that lesson, indicating that he enjoyed literature and art. He was so brilliant. It made me laugh to think of all the other girls wearing football tops in an attempt to win him over. He was nothing like his father. After spending a week researching modern art and nearly finishing Romeo and Juliet, I thought it was a time to approach him. I felt like my heart was going to explode out of my chest as he sat under a tree reading. I asked if I may sit next to him, and he responded, "Yes, yes." Then I pulled out my copy of Romeo and Juliet. He told me it was his all-time favorite, and then he offered me one of his chips. It was going great, and I introduced myself, and after a few days, we were chatting continuously. We always met under the same tree, and one day he asked whether I wanted to go to the theater with him since his sister was in it and he thought I would enjoy it. I almost hugged him right there on the spot, and I went away with a big grin on my face despite the other girls' annoyance. They couldn't believe he was interested in someone like me, for example. We went to the theater together and it was fantastic. I think he realized that I'm new to this whole Shakespeare and art exhibitions thing, but hey, it worked. And he likes me for who I am. He laughs at my goofy jokes and doesn't mind if I can't pronounce some of the terms in his books. And isn't that, after all, what it's all about? Finding someone who appreciates you for who you truly are may be difficult. Maybe I should have had the confidence to speak to him right away. I didn't need to pretend to be someone I wasn't. But I admit, learning about art was a lot of fun. It's fun to try new hobbies and interests now and then. And hey, now I have a lover. What do you think of this story? Please leave your thoughts and stories in the comments area.
Quick question. If you live out in the countryside and the closest other resident to you is like a kilometer away, will you consider them your neighbor? Or if you live in the city somehow who lives at the same distance away from you, is it still a neighbor? Throughout all of the residents my family has moved to since I grew up, I never had any issues with neighbors. Most have been relatively nice, and while some may have been kind of sketchy and suspicious, they kept to keep themselves and didn't really bother me. It was only when I moved out over a year ago that problems happened. I'll admit I was a problem at first. As many of you know, I have a dog. Her name is Nella. And having a dog in a building differs significantly from having one in a separate home, where your neighbors aren't as close. When my roommates and I initially moved in, we had to eat out and do other things. We just let Nella out in the open, and that's what we used to do with her when I was still living with my family. Except I forgot that Nella, despite being the little puppy that she is, she likes to play guard dog and intend to bark at any sounds that she may find threatening. Now this wasn't really a problem back at my family's house because my neighbors was spaced out far enough that they couldn't hear her going egg-shaped it over a knock on the door. But I forgot this factor when I moved into a new place. One time, my roommate went skateboarding and ate chips because a pepper decided that he was going to have a bad night. We went down hills too fast, fell off his board, and tore off a chunk of his chin. He came back and thought, it's not that bad, it sprayed blood into his shirt. When I saw it, I immediately thought, dude, we got to go to the hospital, that's gonna get infected for sure. Is it that bad? Let's say your face is ice cream. It's like someone took a spoon and scooped out the piece of you. We need to get going as soon as possible. And it is customary. We left Nala behind. It was around 1 a.m. at the time. We was back-checked in the hospital and we returned home while most others were sleeping. The next day, I received a call from the building manager inviting me to meet her in her office. It seemed as if I had been sent to the principal's office. When I arrived, she informs me that my dog has been subject of noise complaint from my neighbors. Apparently, Nella was parking at the door for most of the duration that we've gone the previous night, which was 2 hours, I guess. Someone called security to my unit, and they came to my door and knocked. No one was there to answer and only triggered knowledge to bark even louder, and it wasn't even just my next door neighbor, but people from the floor above complained as well. Damn, Nella, you got to relax, explain the situation, and apologize. She was really understanding and cut on some slack. But after that, every time we leave the condo, we have to lock Nala in my room. Although she continues to bark, the concrete was significantly thicker than the front door. A month or two later, I decided to acquire a television for my room and hung it on the wall next to the previous resident's poor effort on the shelf. I don't know if you guys have tried drilling into concrete, and I want to believe I was using the right tools because I trust the do at home depot, but it was hard at digs. It was late in the day the first time I attempted it. Okay, it wasn't even noon, it was 9 o'clock. Now let's talk about a night owl. Even at 9 o'clock in the evening, it feels like the middle of the day. I was aware that somebody was getting ready for bed, but I figured I'd try out the drill and see if I could do it quickly enough that my neighbors wouldn't notice. It's probably a dick move on my part because they totally did. I attempted it, and it's my best impression of a drill. I was like, oh yeah, okay, that's pretty loud. Let's not continue that. So I stopped and thought I should try again tomorrow. About 20 minutes later, I hear a knock at the door. It's the building security. He told me that someone complained about the drilling. I said, I'm really sorry, sir. I understood and realized my mistake. I already stopped. It won't happen again. And for some reason, he didn't think I got it. Like I was going to attempt it once again. He left, and maybe he wanted to make the best of his time for checking it all the way to my unit. But he continued to scold me about how drills are loud and that people are asleep during this time. I'm like, I get it. I stopped a while ago. It won't happen again. I apologize. He continues for another minute and then leave. Now I understand my mistake. It was a dick move. I disturbed my neighbor's peace, and so I wanted to make it right. The next day, I went to the mall and got a gift card which was redeemable for any hundreds of stores. I came back, waited till evening, that's when my neighbor would be home and knocked on their door. No response. I didn't want to just leave it under their door, because I felt like my apology wouldn't feel genuine. So I waited an hour and so tried again. Still no answer eventually. It was nearing the assumed 9 o'clock bedtime, so I thought I would just try again tomorrow. That same night, it's like 4 a.m. When I finally decided to crash, I heard music. It wasn't coming from the living room anywhere in my suite, but from the wall of neighbor's side. Now it wasn't just piercing and thrilling into concrete, but I could hear the music pretty clearly, and the bass were loud enough that it was bothersome, even though I eventually dozed off. But come on, I was irritated because it had happened several times, and it didn't seem fair to complain about my 10-second drilling at that point. But because of my original having party at 4 a.m. could be a little immature, but I chose to keep the gift card, which still stand on a shelf by the front door, ready to go in case I upset my neighbors again, which did not happen anymore because a new contender rose and took the stage. And yeah, you probably noticed the title and assumed would be continue.